Hi guys, so this is our last panel in parallel before we resume our meetings with the global team. My name is Marcilio, I am the co-founder of Sensedia. For those of you who didn't see me speaking yet. So now we are going to have a panel with a discussion. Today, David Moore talked about the importance of APIs being based on the business. And these panels here are always talking about business. Wiza was just talking about focusing on business. And the idea is to talk a little bit more about that right now. Our main umbrella of issues right now is going to be innovation and how the leaders are using innovation to stay ahead. And what are the main angles to explore innovation? And to talk about that, we have invited three great executives to talk to us about their history, not necessarily about right now, but about their history leading huge technology companies. So, to start, I would like to invite the VP of Technology and Business at Cielo. He has experience with e-commerce and digital transformation, working with innovation at Cielo, Carlos Alves. Hello, just sit wherever you want. Okay. With over 20 years of experience leading IT teams, digital transformation teams at huge companies in South America, I would like to invite the CIO at Sicredi, Helio. Hello. And finally, IT executive with over 30 years of experience in many companies in many industries, digital transformation and technology experience in Latin America, United States, and Europe. CIO at ASA Investments, Marcelo Clara. Hello. Okay, guys. So, again, thank you for being here. All of our contents are a part of the panels that we currently hold. So if you are not able to be here or to see online, it's going to be available at our platforms and you will have access to it later. So to kick things off, I would like to discuss about the long experience that these guys have. So we are going to start with Marcelo. We would like to explore your experience in terms of innovation. We talk about innovation in culture, in technology, products, innovation to reduce costs. So first I would like for you to introduce yourself and to talk a little bit about your history, about the different angles of the benefits that innovation can bring, and then we can talk about architecture. Okay, so thank you for the invitation for this event, which is already a reference in the industry. So I am Marcelo Clara. Everybody knows me as Marcelo. I started in the financial market. I was almost a doctor, and then I worked many years, almost 17 years at Safra, at Banco Safra, and then I worked for 5 years at Votorantim, and then after a year and a half, I was at CVC Corp, which is a holding for tourism services in Latin America. And last Monday, I started working at ASA Investments, which was one of the investors at Banco Safra. And this is a company that is currently working in the financial market. This is a little bit about my story. So when we talk about innovation, this is something that has always been present. A few days ago, I was talking about innovation, and we always think that this is something new. But no, innovation has always been happening. Looking back, I see many colleagues that are working in technology for many years. And if we all look in the rearview mirror, we can remember a lot of different projects that involved innovation. Of course, the technologies were different. The ecosystems were closed off. So nowadays they are more open. And of course, the speed was definitely different. But the first thing is to understand that innovation has always been present. And I would like to remind you when I worked at Banco Itamaraty, that no longer existed, and we bought many Xerox machines. We started working notebooks on colorful notebooks, and that was an innovation. People used to receive a horrible financial report with a ridiculous printer, and now we were delivering them a colorful notebook with all of their report, and that was an innovation. So innovation has always been present. The difference right now is that innovation is more associated to the value creation for the business. It was not. It was more technology and less business previously, and we are now talking in a forum about API. And API is something that was created for a technical reason when we started talking about integration with databases, FTP, SFTP, about a queue. So the technology started to change. Then we had SOA, and then we had REST, and so on and so forth. And what I see now in the industries is that it started as technology, and soon enough it becomes product. So what was an API is now a product, and now people are capitalizing on that. So innovation has always been present, but right now it is generating more and more value to the business, and that's the main difference. The technology was inside, but right now it's on the borders. Yes, the focus is business. Yes. And Helio, you, I mean, you already know each other since Fleury, and now you are at Sicredi. And I am actually looking forward to talk about the initiatives that Sicredi, not only open banking, but prior to open banking, and I would like to hear from you. Okay, so let me introduce myself. Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be here. Just as Machado, I also started the financial market, but I developed systems. And for 20 years, I worked for the financial industry creating innovation. Back then, we didn't have those beautiful names as digital transformation. We just had the electronic channel. But I was responsible for the first code for Unibanco 30 hours. You know, the Unibanco was bold enough to start having an ATM for businesses, for services, and not only to withdraw money. And after that, I worked for 20 years creating other electronic channels that were used. So home banking, internet banking, pager banking, mobile banking, first some mobile payments. So I have been, following this innovation history. It's a part of my DNA to remain competitive. But more than that, I used to work at a software house, so to innovate was to grow. It was how we survived. But we could see the impact it had for our customers. So big banks, so it was the end of the huge notebook of the financial statements. Then you started receiving that through email and so on and so forth. I saw that happening. Even the changing branches, it definitely happened. In the old times, we only had ATMs, and now no, we only had the bank employees, and now we only have ATMs. So we saw that with mobile, with neobanks. So the branches are not as important as they were in the past. And of course, for Sicredi, it's the opposite, but I'll tell you about that later. Then I left the banking world. I did a few different things. I went to Buscapé, which was an innovation ecosystem, and it was just vibrant. It was the biggest startup success case. It was purchased by Naspers. It was a huge startup accelerator. Then I went to CNA. I launched CNA e-commerce. Then I went to a startup. Then I became a consultant. I was a partner of Bain for digital and tech. Then I went to Fleury. And now I say that I came back to my origins for banking, and now I am the CIO of a bank. But through all this time, I can see that the speed of change is increasing more and more. And for us, leaders in technology, the challenges are higher and higher. The new technologies and that are created and that can be game changing for business or for infrastructure. I mean, this speed is just overwhelming, and to keep up is the challenge, I guess. Okay, so speed in business. Tell us, Carlos, a little bit about yourself. Okay, thank you for the invitation and good afternoon to everyone. I started as an entrepreneur. I have been an entrepreneur for the majority of my life. I sold my company to Magazine Luiza. Was one of the first startups that Magazine Luiza has purchased. I worked there for 2 years. Then I worked at Riachuelo for a long time. We started the banking midway. Then I worked in retail, and I started working at Cielo in the beginning of this year. And it has a huge connection to my origin as an entrepreneur. I used to have two main indicators. Whenever you innovate, you have to resolve a problem for the customer. And when you are an entrepreneur, and when you communicate with your customers, the first thing that in your mind is, okay, how can I help solve his problem? How can I create conditions to facilitate that? And the biggest indicator, the biggest metric for innovation is how many invoices will I submit? Because there's a whole cycle of building in the future, envisioning the future, and whatever you call it, but real innovation connected to business, and that's definitely connected to what Marcelo said in the beginning. We need to submit invoices. I need to have value. Technology for the sake of technology is not sustainable in the process. Not that it's not important. I believe that this balance between building commodities or new opportunities or new ways to interact with the customer in the payment universe is something that is a trend. But thinking of innovating is to change the capability, the skills of the customer to decide where they are at, and also to understand what's the result, what's the value that is going to be built for the company. So I guess that's my origin, that's my DNA. Whenever you are an entrepreneur, you have to pay the bills by the end of the month. You don't have the time to try and be trendy. You just need to think about what's the need that you're trying to meet and how to build a solution for that in the best and fastest way possible, how to use the technologies in the smartest way possible and more flexible way possible with these models of services or microservices and more complex journeys. It's something that definitely helped the change in architecture and time of response. But I think this is something that has been evolving. And ultimately, if we are delivering results and delivering value, it's definitely going to be reflected in sales. And that's how we close the cycle. Yeah, what matters is to score the goal, right? Yes. Yes. Obviously, I'm going to talk about how technology can be more agile in order to respond to innovation demands. But before of that, of course, we have our HR director here, Dani, paying attention to our conversation. And before we start talking about the technicality, I would like to talk about culture. And we can start with you, Carlos. You had your company, Midway, Riachuelo, now Cielo. How many people work in Cielo for technology? 5,000 people? A little less. At Sensedia, we have 800. You have probably 5 or 6 Sensedias inside your company. But I would like for you to talk about the positive and negative impacts, dependency or independency of the culture of the company when it comes to innovation. Well, I just love culture. I really do. Because to build and to develop systems focused on really solving problems for the customer, it's not a buzzword. I mean, at the end of the day, There are many different ways to write codes or to build architectures of systems, but the people who actually make it happen are the people, are the way you get organized. And this is not news. If you think about the late 40s, if I'm not mistaken, the studies already show that the way you are organized in your company is the way you're going to deliver your product. So to build a culture that is productive, and I am not even going to use names like agile or something like that, but I really mean to build a culture where you leave the culture of fear and enter the culture of empowering the customers and people with skills to contribute, where people actually feel as part of the process of creating the solutions that you are going to propose. And also the interconnections that you need to build with the areas in order to deliver an end-to-end solution, a solution that makes sense. So we cannot connect all of this in an environment where you have a difficulty in the entire process, or where every technology that is being developed are not going to have problems. I mean, if you don't want to have any problems, just don't change anything. So to build a productive culture capable of guiltlessly facing a post-mortem diagnosis in order to learn and to foment resilience and trust in order to develop better products in a consistent and timely manner. This is how you build a company with a higher level. So I really believe that the base line for any design that leads to innovation or to an environment that is capable of innovation is the trust that you build between people without surprises, with the empowering, but also with the liability and this serenity and this maturity that you need. So this is how you build a company that can go to higher places. It's not the control, the governance, the direction, and empowerment. So I believe that culture is the first pillar to be able to construe innovation. Yes. And of course, also the safety network. Absolutely. And the nice thing about autonomy, we are always talking about autonomy in technology, but I don't mean anarchy. No, I mean autonomy in a proposed tech within a model where you can think about the sustainability of the business, where you can build something in a language that is completely new, in a model or in architecture that has no proof of, no evidence of, for a company, for a supporting company. I mean, this just doesn't fit anywhere. Within a universe where you can have a nice rationality of the discussion with good enough range to develop the skill of building technology for solving a problem. I mean, between 0 and 1, there are many, many things in that middle. So, yeah.
How can I complement that? I would love to answer this question because I was fortunate enough of having worked and currently working at a company that has a very strong company. Two different cultures, Fleury and Sicredi. They are very well known for having a very strong excellence culture and excellent service. And this is not built overnight. This comes from examples, a lot of years in the making. And I will connect that with innovation. We know that we have innovation everywhere. So the comparison that I'm going to do is the nonconformity. When you have the culture of having good service, of wanting to, aiming to please, always wanting to surprise your customers, you always want to do more. So you're not content with what you have. So that leads to innovation, new ways of delighting the customer, new ways of making the process even better, creating something that the customer can say, wow, I wasn't expecting this. I am really surprised. And this happens in these companies with a strong culture without forcing that. You don't need to create innovation and connecting with startups, this or that to create innovation. It comes naturally to the people who are coming. So the culture is very important for you to not have to force anything. You can just do something naturally. And in Sicredi, we see that a lot. In the Confederation, we have 105 banks, all the cooperatives that have a lot of autonomy to create. So we can travel all over the country to understand this diversity of operation. And there was an agency in the Northeast, and they were creating a co-working space inside the agency. No one told them to do that, but they thought it would be good for the customer. And the customers loved it because the bank was no longer a place where you would ask for money. You go when you network, you talk to people, and they had amazing co-working spaces with 10 rooms, coffee breaks, coffee, snacks inside the agency. No one told them to do that. It was an initiative of the manager together with the cooperative president saying, well, we have this demand. I think the customers are going to like it. Then I went to another agency in the countryside of Mato Grosso, and they had public Wi-Fi. We only had Sicredi in that city, and we had like the square, the church, and Sicredi. It's a very small ones. There's 250 cities that only have Sicredi as it's the only financial institution. So to help the development, they put free Wi-Fi for everyone, and we would pay the bill. And it's innovation. It's a small innovation, but for that community, it makes all the difference because it was in a place where they could barely get any cell reception. Since it was a very small place, the operators didn't want to improve connectivity. They didn't want to put in antennas and all of that. So this is all driven by the culture of doing the best that you can and delighting the customer. We want to do something good, helping develop the communities where we're in. So this is something that happens naturally, and I live that a lot in both companies. Wow, I imagine the importance of the Sicredi manager in these cities. They're as important as like the mayor or the father of the church. There was one when I went with the manager, and they were almost the mayor. He said, "Oh, do you know that shop? We financed it. You know that hairdresser? We financed it. You know that little store? Yeah, we actually renovated that person's home." So the entire city was around the bank, and we would move the city, and this is something natural. It comes from the culture of serving and delighting the customer. Amazing. Wow. I thought we reached the top, but that was amazing. Go ahead, Marcelo. Oh, there's a quote that I really like. It's not my quote, but I talk about it everywhere. If you know me, you know. So it means structure conditions behavior. It's from Socrates. Adizes is someone who developed a thesis in the University of California, and today he's present in many places, but he has a methodology, which is the Adizes methodology, and he talks about structure, conditioning, behavior. And when I talk about culture, it says, how do I organize? How do I interact? How is my relationship with other people? And if we don't have the proper structure, I will not necessarily succeed in any goals in my personal or professional life. So it's fundamental, it's essential to have this structure, and it's important that we understand the ecosystem that we're in to know which structure is present, because structure means culture. It means people and relationships, and culture is done with practice and people. So the moment where we are today, technology is more and more impacted by change in culture, because we get companies that are decades old or centuries old. They have a culture that was built in years and decades. The model was more hierarchical, and what we see today is we see a lot more success in a horizontal model, because 1 + 1 = 2. So it's no longer 1. And when we understand that, we start provoking the organization to disassemble this hierarchy and creating a more horizontal model. The essence of that is if I'm able to collaborate in a more intensive and less departmental way, so I do step one, you do step two, you do step three, and the product comes out. Isn't that better? Because the fundamental element as technology, since we're driving innovation and we are creating value in the product, why can't we talk to the company and provoke them so that it has a different structure? And the thing is, how many of us today see within our homes that the technology topic is now for everyone? Before, a young person, they would do like an MBA in finance, or do something else because they started having a technical area and they needed to understand about accounting because they're going into a more manager position. Today we see the movement of people needing to learn technology. So in an executive committee or even a board, it's not good enough to know about accounting. You just needed to see, the balance, the ROI, and financial metrics. Today, they need to understand technology as well. And it's our role when we're shifting gears and understanding that it's a more horizontal model and not vertical, and we need to take this technology to be present in every layer because each person has something to contribute. So it's no longer you do it. We need to be together. And innovation is related to that. Being together, listening to people's needs. So like you said, for the city, internet was important. A collaboration environment was important. Yes, deep down, culture is what you do every day without realizing that you're doing it. Yeah, I say it's the way that you answer for the first time in a spontaneous way, so your first response. Yeah, so if you want to change, you need to change the way you act. Yeah, you won't survive 3 difficult questions if you're pretending to have a culture that you don't have. Well, I know the story of Cielo and Sicredi very closely. Marcelo has visited Sensedia at some other time. I think Carlos hasn't been, right? Yeah, I have to go. But I would like to. Well, it was an amazing discussion. We talked about business. The product depends on the structure. Behavior comes from structure. So the culture is not going to be reshaped overnight. You create culture throughout history, and it will only survive if it's in those formats. So let's move on to technology. I know many examples as to how technology has been helping innovation. The keynote of this example was open business everywhere. So what is open? If you create it vertically in your company to open regulated APIs like open banking, we can be the integration with partners in an ecosystem. It can be your insertion in several journeys. So I'm opening Uber and it's showing me a hotel where I'm going or whatever. And finally, how you use that in your internal architecture. So I know Sicredi has all 4 scenarios, right? Sicredi and Cielo were there as the companies that actually use that. So let's start with you, Helio. I would like for you to give some examples. It can be from Sicredi now. You've been at 3 months. You've been there for 3 months. Almost 10 years, right? What did he do in 3 months? He traveled all over Brazil. Yeah, I'm traveling a lot. But I wanted you to talk about other things as well, but I know from Sicredi there's a lot. So if you can tell me a little bit about the architectural point of view, what does that help? What does it get in the way? How is it relevant? Thinking about the final top line result. Sure. So for Sicredi, especially because it's centralized, technology is a big service hub. But potentially, I have 105 shadow ITs. So if the cooperative wants to put a CRM team, they're going to do it. So if they ask me, they can ask me if I have a CRM, and I say yes, and I have Salesforce. So this is the one we use. This is recommended. You can use. We standardize and fine. But sometimes there's a specific need, and they have to create it. So it needs to be built. There are very various needs because we're all over Brazil. And just from region to region, we have differences. But other than everything, we have a difference in public. So south, southeast, we have a lot of agribusiness. But in the northeast, the public is completely different. There's a lot of doctors, there's a lot of public workers that have completely different needs than the agribusiness people. But it's one culture for everyone. So how can I give them flexibility? APIs are essential. Otherwise, somehow they're going to do something, but they're going to have to check the account, they're going to have to sell a product, they're going to have to be connected with some kind of payment method, so they're going to have to be connected with me. And your relationship with the corporations, is it on the API architecture view? Yes, completely. So a robust API structure allows me to do that. And going beyond, since they have the autonomy and this differentiation, for example, now I'll give you a more recent example that I saw happening. We would go some places and we saw a big opportunity for condominium administration because they need to have a bank backing it up because of several situations, since managing the assets, issuing bills. So being connected with those people, it's important because they have their platform. I'm not going to create a platform for that, but for my bank to be connected with that person, it makes all the difference because it's an easier experience for those who live in that condominium. So here as well, API is essential. If I don't have APIs, I'm going to have to be doing everything individually. So you deliver that with an open AI? Yes. So if my dog was barking and I got a ticket, I got fined, you're going to generate that? Yes, I will generate that and they're going to pay it. So these are just a few examples of how we can support the ecosystem using open APIs and making a lot of business cases feasible. It's so much easier for that manager. It's a differential for me because if other banks don't do it, I do it, and they're going to want to work with me. And they're going to say, Sicredi is so much easier. It's more like plug and play. And it's a different process. There's no reconciliation on or any of that. So these are just examples of how we can make that feasible and the value that brings into our company. Yeah, that's going to be my last round if we can actually measure the effects of these projects. Carlos, I know when I was talking to you now, a lot of old and new initiatives, but can you share your views on that? Yes. You could talk about other companies as well. No, I think Cielo has amazing cases. Today, when you talk about Cielo, it's the company that has the biggest capillarity in Brazil to capture sales and commercial establishments. We have a spectacular logistic put together. The world is changing and new needs are emerging. And all of a sudden, we launch an equipment of sale capture. So, how do I scale the capability of making the customer service more personalized? And today we have Smart POS. Smart POS started with the opportunity of being a great platform of applications that can be customized or support specific niches in the market all over the country. Using APIs, using platform concept. I think platforms as well is a good word for that. How do you create the capability of third parties developing applications for me to be able to make this available in a portable equipment and where a market need and mobility need is very real? They want to be mobile. They want to have mobile cashiers, and depending on the business, it has to be even more mobile. When you think about distribution companies that have to go to the customer all the time, they can't stay in a fixed cashier position. So this need has a specific need that comes up. So how do you bring or how do you create this? Using your strength, using the capillarity with the possibility of increasing the applications that are going to support your customers' needs. So we have Smart POS launched. Today we have 22,000 developers working on our platform with over 5,000 specific applications for market niches. When I look at that business specifically and I see the degree of fidelization because you have a level of hyper personalization of the customer's activity, you understand that that's only possible with an open concept. So I have the security of building my MDM inside an application management that I'm going to make available. I have capillarity of capturing it. I have the know-how of the capture, and maybe or surely the highest TPS in the country, because we have already supported over 55% of all transactions in the country. On the other hand, I open a group of APIs that are related to that ecosystem, and I tell a software developer, hey, I'm going to develop your application that is going to create monetization for you, revenue for you, and it's going to support you on another end of the business. So this was very relevant, and it was fully built on microservices, always having connections with application interfaces. In the case of Leo, which is smart POS, I remember that when the ecosystem was just beginning, I think it was Daniel that was taking care of it at the time. He would say that sometimes he would get an app to certify because he would only know that it was being built when it came to be certified. The entire development experience was done without talking to the Cielo support. So I want to certify an app where you order beer and you choose how thick you want the foam, but they need to certify it because it's going to go into the machine. So all those apps weren't done by Cielo. They were all created by the community. So maybe the guy from business in Cielo was thinking, oh my God, what do we want? But he never thought of the thickness of the foam of a beer. So it's an amazing experience of understanding the behavior. So look at where these people are spending money. Yeah, or the company itself. Sometimes you have the company that has a development area. They have their own application, and they take their application, they develop it inside our ecosystem because we have this mobile capture, and this mobile capture that has a matching connection. We have great customers that develop their own application, but to run within our smart POS universe to be able to capture that and make their business absolutely high in mobility and services. So you start to broaden that universe. Yes, we have some areas where the menu is on the machine. So what they could do with just the payment, now you can have more uses to one equipment. What about you, Marcelo? I'm not sure how you are there. I'll tell you some cases. I like to tell cases because they give us context and we remember them. In 2018, I was in Votorantim. I received a call on a Friday night. The call was we were being challenged to integrate the Union Bank inside our bank. So we had a digital account and we had this banking service. So as an MP, we didn't have these. They didn't have this AP. It was a technology company that would have a card, and then they would have like a prepaid account, and they were associated with a bank. This bank had an issue, and they needed to have another bank to take over the operation. So Friday night, to summarize the story, we on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, on Tuesday, Union was on with a transaction with the Votorantim Bank. After that, that became banking as a service from BV. There are several fintechs that are like surrogates, having this kind of financial service, doing regulatory parts and PIX transactions. This starts way back then. We already had an API platform that started, as I said, with a technical point of view because we bought technology not thinking about the business but thinking about technology that was going to make integrations easier. And when we had this case, you're going to say, oh, so you had the APIs ready, right? No, we integrated via database at the time. And okay, we had a VPN. The website was in Minas and we were in São Paulo. We finished the VPN and we integrated with the database, and after 3 days it was done. Then what did we do? We migrated everything for API and that became a product.
Yes, this is what we had. So we had to do it for the bank because it was faster that way. We started working with this integration using the database, using the API. That became a product. Even before the launch of Open Finance, this is very common nowadays, banking as a service. And we already had the developer portal. Yes, and I keep just thinking about everyone working and pushing it at night. Yeah, we could talk about that for hours, about all the challenges of what can I do with the account number. But anyway, it started as a technical thing, and now it's a product, and is one of the pillars of bank as a service. Yes, but now let's talk about tourism. I also have a project from tourism. We first started with the technology, and now it is a product that's called Connectacy. So if you'd like to develop an app to sell tourism products, all of them are already available in our dev portal on CVC. If you want to buy to purchase plane tickets or whatever, it is everything is available on our portal. They can use this platform and they can make payments. So it started as a technology, like a marketplace. Yes, works like a marketplace. And speaking of marketplaces, I believe that we are now getting into a moment of hyperconnectivity. This is a word that I like, and that's where I get to our current case. Our challenge has more and more become not what we deliver, but how we deliver them. Because what we deliver is basically a commodity. The majority of the things nowadays are commodities, because if I don't buy them, the competitor if I don't sell them, the competitors will sell them. But the most important thing is how we deliver them. So it has nothing to do with not necessarily develop everything, but we have to be more Embraer and less Ford. So, for example, I am going to project and design the plane, but not the parts, not the pieces. So the architecture is way more important nowadays than engineering. Believe that if you will. But it's important to know where the house is, where are the windows, why are they important, and then we go to the engineering and the execution. But I mean, the vision starts with the architecture, where I leave the business and I focus. Where I leave the technology and focus on the business. And if I have a roadmap, if I have to change anything, it's easier. It's easier for me. I know exactly what are the specifications. I know where are the plugins. I can change things because I have the architecture. And now speaking of my new case, okay? If it is true, and if we are saying that the products are basically commodities nowadays, and the delivery is the challenge right now, nowadays we don't have solutions just to have a digital signature of contracts. We already have a solution for that. We don't have solutions for enriching databases with geolocation and many other things. And then we have ChatGPT breaking a barrier that we can integrate very easily to anything. So the current challenge that we have, and that's what we have in the operation of ASA, which is going to be very, very relevant for the financial market. We have to develop the plan, the roadmap, the blueprint. And then you go to the market and ask for the supplier who can actually deliver with the quality that you need, with the timing that you need. And if you have to change things later, that's okay, because you already know all the connections, you already know the blueprint. So this is a second moment where you can start from the architecture, use this concept, and then with the technology, with this hyperconnectivity, which by the end of the day is delivering technology through APIs, you can have other solutions with safety in a more efficient and different way than what we were doing in the past. So architecture is more important than engineering. Yes. Okay, so I have 3 questions here. No, actually 4 questions. But now let me ask my question first, okay? We have been talking for almost 50 years now. Do you believe that? Can you believe that? We are definitely going to use more time than we expected. But anyway, I wanted to talk about business. Helio, you said something that I am always saying, and sometimes it feels like I'm just trying to help everyone to use API, but sometimes the choice between working with Sicredi or other bank is, a very small detail, because we may already have all the integrations, all the SDKs that I already use, but I have always believed that in a world where API is the door to the store, that's what makes the difference of how to use that. So the connectivity experience can be different. So when the connectivity is experienced, there comes another differential. So let's talk a little bit about numbers. Have you ever been able to measure that okay, for some condos we were able to have higher we were able to up 10%, or I mean, do you have any top line numbers? Well, I can have many details, but I can give you the ballpark of the impact. So for companies, before we started with this open plan business, we had 25% of representativity of our total flow. But currently, we are at 40%. It basically doubled. So it's basically the most important segment that we have in our company. And I believe that the biggest differential for that is to be more open and to create those partnerships that we have created with many different businesses that are not necessarily financial businesses, but they do need financial businesses that integrate with us. So at the end of the day, you bring up a company and you start a relationship with a company with something specific, and then things are getting bulkier. So when they bring their accounts to us, we start with thousands of employees. So this innovation is just a spearhead to start a relationship that is going to bring bigger and bigger results than you ever that you could ever foresee in the beginning. There is another indicator that we are always looking at, and that kind of goes in the opposite direction of the market. But again, our model is different from other banks. We are focused on the on-site, in-person service because of the corporate, the cooperative model. So we have statistics about that to prove our business model. And a few of these examples that I mentioned regarding innovation, for example, co-working, there was even a branch that had a kids space, like a huge toy with video games. And I thought, well, is this a bank branch? But I mean, it is funny, but it can show that it actually increases the time they spend there, and also how often they come there, because they can bring their kids, their kids are having fun there. So of course we don't have sales goals for the managers, but the thing is, it's important to try and understand how to help the associates. And we also had its increment in maybe 10% of the recurrence, and also the time the people spent inside the branch. And this is an indicator of yours. Yes. So this is how we can actually measure these types of advantages. Yes. And the same thing goes for the app, for example. How long you spend on the app? Do you have any examples? Well, I actually have one example that I really like to share. It was in my previous company, and I am going to apologize because I'm going to be very technical right now. But this is a nice example. I believe I arrived at 18, and we were starting the production. We were in about 45 deploys. Hello, can you hear me? Okay, so productive deploys a month for Gmod with rollback and snapshot. Of course, during the night. And then we started an entire journey, okay? This is not something trivial. You start a journey to build an architecture that is oriented to microservices with context, with functional context and subdomains. And by the end of the year, we had the output. It was one of the indicators that we had. And we were working with 4,000 productive deployments with code review a day. So when you go from 45 deploys, which was basically a whole story that you had to work on during the snapshot at night. You had to make a prayer to make sure it's going to work, and then figure out the rollback. And then you go to this huge volume of deploys with automations, with automated workflows, and you actually have the measure of that. It talks about the the capacity to deliver value. So you can basically explode your base of teams working with developments of groups and squads in development, but you also increase your capacity to work on a workflow with many components that are basically ready with a CSD that is automated with all the tests and all the security and code quality check. And then you can understand that, okay, it's worth it. I'm talking about the technical perspective here. When you can see the deliverables there, it is delivering a huge improvement by 22, by 30 maybe. I was working 2 deploys a night, and now I'm working at 200 new small changes every day. So the capacity of the company to innovate increases exponentially, and this is something that is very important. This is a number that I actually follow up closely. Very nice. Wow, there are many examples that I could give. One that I actually like is when we change the engineering workflow, and nowadays the deploy is a lot more dynamic. But I was always thinking about it, is to able to bring the metric from IT to the business. That's what we used to call it knock, with the 24/7 campaign, the structure, the bad team backup, availability. So the knock has to do with network. So I always say that it should be called business command center, to stop looking at CPU, memory, latency, bandwidth, and whatever. We should start converting that into business. And back in CVC, with this new platform, we started looking at products, channels, and processes. So nowadays, by channel, whether it's online, whether it's on the stores, we can see the availability of the channel, product, and journey. So search, chart, checkout, orders. And I believe that in the most consolidated industry, this must be pretty common, but we didn't used to see that for tourism. So nowadays, we can go into that much detail, and we can bring these measurements to business. And that's very nice, because we bring this concept of technology focused on business, and that helps us with our daily routines. Yes, that's actually funny, because that's what we call APIX stores. That happens in many different cities. We had this in Belo Horizonte last month, and there are 3 companies showing stories with APIs. In Direcional Engenharia, which is a huge company focused in the popular housing sector. So they focus in people who buy one house in their entire lives. And they follow up with the house building, and they have an Alexa. So they ask, Alexa, show me pictures of the building, show me pictures of the construction, those types of things. And when we think about this architecture, we say, okay, the negotiation is actually a pain point. And the other ones are just, following up because, I don't know, maybe there was a fee or there was any other problems. However, they were able to start the process from the first bill to all the fees using the API. And then they saw that the problem started when they generated the API, but they didn't call the next one. So we thought, okay, we have an event hub here, right? So what if I created an event for whenever this call didn't make the next one? So they created an event. So whenever we had the fee but didn't have the bill, we received an alert so we could make a call to the customer. And they were actually able to double the conversion there using Events Hub. Can you believe that? So when the IT guy has a business overview, they have a playground. They can have a field day with that. Guys, there are 4 questions here, and we ran out of time. Unfortunately, we cannot go through all of them. One of them is not even to me. Henrique Brioli said, okay, how do banks see quantum mechanics? And I'm not going to talk about that right now. Julia also asked how to reconcile innovation with the business. And guys, we also have half an hour for a coffee after that. And maybe we can talk there. The questions are just great. Julia asks how to reconcile innovation and risks and fallouts, of course, and expectations of return and results at the C level, which of course are you guys, and how to be more accurate in the decisions to be made in this balance between risk and benefit. Guys, do you want to respond that? Yes, let me talk about the priorities. Well, the market has changed a little bit because, of course, there was a lot of capital, and there are a lot of money in a while ago, and it's no longer the case. But I guess that the biggest challenge right now is to understand what is a priority, because everything is a priority right now. So to me, the word is how to define a priority, how to set a priority, because usually the IT teams has to understand, okay, what are the, the priorities. It's actually funny, and I tell the business team, okay, you tell me what are the priorities, and I'll tell you how long it's going to take to do it. So and actually setting priorities is difficult to do. It requires method, and I know that there are companies that are in different stages of maturity when it comes to that. So there are many companies that do that with emotion, and others that use technology in order to do that. But this is a challenge. And about the second question, the error culture. Okay, so what am I willing to bet on here? And then there was Roman change and a lot of different cultural things, but it involves culture. So at the end of the day, we need to protect our agendas. So if you have an innovation agenda that accepts error, that's okay. You have to protect this agenda. Otherwise, it's just going to contaminate other agendas of the company. Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. Another question by Danilo Cardoso. In today's lectures, we heard a lot about business driving the innovation through APIs. And then he is worried. But what about the technology? How important is technology here? And please, you respond because Helios is the next one. Well, I guess it requires a balance, It's like a pendulum. There were technological trends that were driving everything, and then we just surf business and technology together. That. But by at the end of the day, we don't have black and white. There are lots of gray area here, and it requires the effort to make it happen. So there is no brilliant idea, and sometimes the effort is just too much. It's not worth it. So there may be cases that look nice, but ultimately they just don't work out. And there's, of course, the technology. Sometimes we're talking about a brilliant idea, something that we say, okay, it's going to change the world. But when we start to plan and try and understand how is this going to be feasible, you see that it's not. And it requires a different business case. It happens. But I believe that in both situations, it requires balance. So we cannot just, point to any side. Yes, I believe that the origin of the API depends on the business. So the origin depends on the business for the construction. Yes, I believe that these agile teams that work in a multidisciplinary way, where the dev works with the PO, discussing the business, definitely generates a little bit more of this balance. There's not this thing about I do my part, then you do yours, then he does his. These discussions are way richer, and it helps balance that. Yes, David Moore also talked about API product owner, this role. And the first question was, okay, where can I find this guy? Where do they live? How do they eat? And this guy is basically a PO who works with architecture. So, Carlos, now you are the innovation guy from Cielo. You didn't arrive at Cielo when they were in the wealthier times. But the question is, what is the limit for innovation? And when it comes to time and budget, when is the persistence and error?
Wow, that was a good one for me. Yeah, save the best for last. Well, I think today we're already living a volume of innovation in the payment universe that is absurd. I like the quote, when does persistence become an error? Because the maturity of understanding, first of all, what's the goal? Where do you want to be? The question should always be, what problem am I trying to solve here? Because doing something just for the sake of doing it, not having a purpose, not having uh, purpose behind it, maybe you're never going to reach that answer. You're going to change persistence to an insistence, and you're going to create distance. So I would say that today we live a continuous process of innovation, and it's a lot due to our importance of our role in the market. A lot it's because of the importance of the regulator in the market and what they do. So recently I was at an event abroad in the US, and Brazil was being quoted all the time because of the PIX and new payment methods that we have. And when I look into our universe, PIX and the growth of PIX in the payment method and how quickly people were adopting it. You've probably seen a lot of graphs about that. And I look at how Cielo contributes to the store owner, the retailer, the entrepreneur, or the big retailers. And I came from a big retailer, but I was an entrepreneur. My wife is an entrepreneur, so I do have a lot of that in me. So I look at peaks, for example. How do we make it available as a some kind of difference related to what the banks were doing? Today in a Cielo equipment, you can use peaks and the machine does something different that helps them. So at the end of the payment, they have a receipt saying the peaks happened. And this makes a lot of difference. If you only put the QR code that you can also do, put the QR code of your bank, someone is either going to have to look at their uh, what they sent, or you're going to have to trust the customers. So I'm just giving you an example of a new agenda that has a huge adoption level, that is now a world reference in financial cases that is being talked about. And we understand that it's a super important rail. And we've been adding innovation to that. So I don't know if I answered accordingly, but I would say that with a mature team, understanding the purpose and the vision of the company, having a clear view of a portfolio, following the real need of the customer and the behavior of different generations and how they're able to influence the business that you're trying to do, and having a methodology to define priorities, then in that case, innovation is intrinsic to that. It's going to be embedded in any of the activities that you want to do, because there will always be an easier way of building a journey that is in fact convenient, simple, and practical for the customer. And in a company such as ours, which is today a company that is totally capillary and important in the process of finalizing transactions. So the entrepreneur is over there working every day to please the customer. When they get to the sale point, they need to be 100% sure that that sale is going to go through. So that's our role, making sure they have safety, they have speed, make sure it's simple enough, and make sure we're not going to get in the way of their effort. We're actually going to create new ways for them to do that better. Cielo never has an issue. No. But we can't even make it objective or measure properly. Like, it's case by case, right, to approve innovation. There isn't a comparison like, hey, we're going to invest 1 million and we want to receive this in 7 months or whatever. Well, if you consider the 3 H's, so what is the percentage of time and investment for each one of those? So you have books and books talking about different methods of how much you should invest in time and money for innovation. Understanding clearly the strategic plan of the company and your purpose and where the market is going to go. Being able to build this scenario of I have 5% on H3, 20% that I'm going to invest on H2, and 70% that I'm going to invest on H1, or 75% to actually be 100. So you're able to organize yourself. So we have an innovation area that we call garage. This innovation area is going to look at the entire regulatory agenda, where we have opportunities in that agenda to be able to participate. And on the other hand, look at the entire behavior, the consumer's behavior, the retailer's behavior, to see where we can help so that that process is more simple. So it's going to be trial and error inside a well-defined universe of the 3H curve with controlled guardrails so that we don't lose focus of what we have to do as a primary execution. Amazing, great guardrails. I love that term. We're going to close the questions here. I'm going to ask this question, actually. Is there a research team inside your company working with quantum technology? No. I can't say. Well, if I tell you, I'm going to have to kill everyone in this room. So I would like for you to say your final message so that we can go get some coffee and get ready for the final plenary. Can we get started with Carlos? Sure. You guys, thank you so much. I hope somehow we were able to bring something new to you. I am available. Cielo has been going through a very relevant process of evolving and incremental evolution to build an agenda. So if you're interested and you want to know more, we're hiring a lot, so send your resume. Okay, great. Well, I would like to thank you all for the opportunity. I hope this panel was good and in some cases for you to learn from. There's a common term in the market that the innovation team talks about is the fail fast. I don't like that a lot. I think it's a little bit dangerous, but I would like to say fail small. So yeah, you can fail, but try to do some damage control. Failure is a part of the process, and you are going to fail when you're trying to innovate, but sometimes there are failures that cause catastrophic damage. So before you take any risks, make sure you control the size of the negative impact if it does fail. Today on Sicredi, we have over 100 innovations happening, but they're all small. Like the examples that I said, we don't do it in 10 agencies. We do it in one. We see the results. We go then to 5 or 10. If it's still working, then we move on to the others. But we don't do it for like 10, 20, 100 at a time, because if it doesn't work, the size of the issue or the fail is going to be, too relevant for the company. Well, I would just like to thank you. I appreciate being here with the two of you and you, of course. And congratulations for being here, because we need to think outside the box. Sometimes in our company, we think, oh, I'm there every day looking at a bunch of things, but it's good for us to have different discussions, and it's amazing for us to try to find the non-obvious answers. So try to find the non-obvious answers, because that's where the success lies. Thank you so much. Well, you're the best. Thank you so much. 1 hour and 10 minutes of panel. I have some quick messages. Well, it's only because you're the boss, right? So now we're going to go ahead to the coffee break. We should have 40 minutes, but we're going to have like 25. It's enough to get some coffee. It's good because we won't get the lines. Now on the main stage, we're going to have a talk by Paulo Malinverno. He was the vice president of Gartner for 23 years. He led SOA. So governance is something that he created. He created the magic quadrant of APIs. He left Gartner a few years ago, and now he's at Sensedia. He's our innovation and strategy head, and he's going to talk about what is the future of APIs for the next 5 years. It's priceless. And after that, we have a talk by Renata talking about the evolution of architecture and how that has been influencing the innovation at Natura. So also go to the fantastic world of APIs if you want to talk about it more technically and get to know everyone. It's always full. There are some tech talks going on of deeper topics of security, adaptability, products, and all of that. And if you're online, we're going to have a break and you can keep watching the podcasts as well that have been going on all day. Okay? Thank you so much, everyone.